Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After with Elizabeth and Andrei. Let's watch.
I wanted to say, but for now on, like, I'm just gonna do it on my own. I'm gonna be a provider and this, like, and I appreciate your help and everything, but, you know, like, I'm just gonna step it up and, you know, like, make it on my own.
But proof is in the pudding. I mean, I haven't seen it yet.
So, to give the father some possible credit is to say that the father might show his love to his daughter by concerning himself with this question. Elizabeth wants to have a comfortable life, comfortable enough anyway, and the father wants what's best for Elizabeth. And so what the father feels like he can do is fight for that, is to advocate for that. Maybe the father feels like that's his love language. The way that he loves his kids is to make sure that they are financially stable. And when Andrei comes in and there's this question mark about whether or not he's going to work, the father feels like it would be unloving for him not to get involved and to pressure Andrei or to help him or something, or to talk with Elizabeth about it. So that's one thing. The other possibility, in addition to that, is that the father has a lot of anxiety about money. Maybe he grew up in poverty, I don't know. And that is a central focus for him. I've worked with families with a trauma history of, say, they were refugees. They were Jewish refugees from World War II and were extremely poor when they emigrated to North America and were just barely getting by. And week to week, they didn't know if they were going to survive. And so when they had children, they wanted to really make sure that their children understood financial responsibility, that a good career is very important, that saving your money is very important. And then that gets passed down through the generations. It's not only a trauma that gets passed down through the generations, a fear, a constant fear of not having enough money to survive, because there was a time for 20 years where the family didn't even know if it would survive if there wasn't enough money. And those paradigms get passed down to the generations. Also, a way of showing that you love someone is to be very, very laser focused on that issue. So maybe that's where the dad is coming from. I don't know.
Facing it, so what's the problem?
I was really shocked when Elizabeth told me she was pregnant. You could have knocked me over with a feather. Just because he came over here, got married, and then knocked up my daughter without any plan in place to support her.
So he uses a lot of language like this that I find to be concerning. A father is referring to his daughter who got married, and then his daughter and her husband decided that they wanted to get pregnant, or that they did get pregnant, that they wanted to at least take the risk of getting pregnant, and they got pregnant. And for the father to refer to it as, you're going to knock up my daughter, I don't know where that's coming from. Is that coming from a place of patriarchy and control, or is that just the way he talks? Is that how he shows concern for the two of them? There's a lot of different ways of wording it. Now, I don't know, but there's been some indication anyway that the family, particularly the father and maybe the father's father, have a paradigm of women are possessions. My wife is my possession, my daughters are my possession, and men who get involved with my women have to respect my property, that kind of thing. We don't have to go that far back in history, or even back at all, because there's plenty of people in the United States and around the world who have this point of view. So it wouldn't be strange, but it is concerning. Well, is it concerning? I mean, it certainly bothers me because I don't prefer that way of living, and it's not a good idea to treat human beings as possessions or property, in my culture anyway. But in this family, it's probably not going to go over well. One, because it doesn't treat Elizabeth like she can make her own choices. It makes her feel like a possession and a piece of property and someone who doesn't have agency. This notion that Andrei knocked her up instead of the two of them taking a risk and they got pregnant. They made a mutual choice and they got pregnant. Looking at men as the sexual power thing that men do things to women, which happens sometimes, but I think for Elizabeth and Andrei, it was a mutual decision. It wasn't the man doing something to the woman. It was a thing that they did to each other, or a thing that they participated in. Anyway, I hope the languaging and the paradigm that women are possessions and that women are weak, without agency, without the ability to make their own choices. I don't know. I don't know if that's present, but there seems to be some indications that, I want to do this symbol because I feel like we're orbiting around something in a lot of the things that the dad does and a lot of things that the family does in relation to what dad does. I don't know how to put it into words, but let's keep that in mind as we move forward.
Why I'm upset? I'm telling you why I'm upset. You guys came to me and said, hey, we need help. We don't like being in an apartment. We have 2 big dogs. You have this house right down the street with a fenced-in yard. Can we move in? And oh, by the way, we can't afford to pay you rent. Do you mind if we live there for free?
Okay, so that's interesting. They came to him and said, can we please live in one of your houses for free because we don't like living in this apartment. We can't afford to live in that house of yours, but we would like to live. So they came to him, which is interesting. That does show that he wasn't using it as a tool for control, that they came to him and asked him for that.
I said, absolutely, but here's my condition. Take care of the property like it was your own. But then the place didn't look good when I saw it. Your grass was like this high.
Because we had just moved in and it was the summertime and it was raining.
You can't buy a $150 lawnmower and keep the grass
Versus
cut
groceries
in a
for the
house that
week.
you're living in for
No.
free?
So I keep coming back to this paradigm that I think is in the family, where if you're going to ask the father for help financially, and I think a lot of people in this family do, either just give me money or give me a house or give me a job or give me benefits, this kind of thing. If you're going to do that, then you have to play by his rules. And as I've been saying from the beginning, you could argue that that's fine. It's a quid pro quo in that way. It's like, I'll give you money, but you have to play by my rules. You're going to have to keep the house up, this sort of, or you're going to have to let me influence what's going on in your family. And if you don't want that, then you don't take the money and you figure out things on your own. Now, I think Andrei is coming from a place of disadvantage. He's in another country. The economy and the job prospects are really quite different. So is the father capitalizing on that? I don't know. But on one level, you could say, well, you know, if you don't want the dad barking at you about cutting the lawn, then maybe don't ask to move into one of his houses. Maybe just stay in the apartment. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like Andrei is not keeping up his end of the deal in maintaining my house. And I feel that they're completely taking me for granted.
Right. So I think the dad might also have some traumas around that. This feeling of being taken advantage of, being humiliated, being played like a chump. He is nice enough to give them the house, and then they betray him somehow. They don't live up to their end of the bargain, and he feels like he's being ripped off, and that plagues him and makes him feel hurt. And then he gets angry and invasive about things and accusatory. I think we might be seeing the beginning of a potential theme moving forward. The other thing I should mention is that I think this family does have a orientation towards enmeshment, meaning that there's blurred boundaries between people in the family, and that people invade each other's space, people use guilt and pressure. And why do some families do that? Well, there's a difference between invasion and enmeshment and closeness. I want to be very clear about that. Sometimes people make mistakes of making those things synonymous. You can be very close while respecting each other's boundaries when you need to. You can be very involved. You could call each other on the phone every day. You could just, walk into someone's house. But when someone wants boundaries, then you respond. You're okay, no big deal. I hear you. That's that flexibility of families. That's healthy. With enmeshment, with over-involvement, there isn't flexibility. And why would there be that inflexible enmeshment and invasion and blurring of boundaries? Well, usually it's because families are terrified that if they let go or if they put up or if they allow boundaries to exist, that the family will just fly apart and you will lose any kind of closeness that you have. The problem is when you invade other people's boundaries, you're not actually close and you don't actually feel close. You feel like you're involved in each other's lives, but because other people aren't being respected and other people aren't allowed to be themselves, there's this false sense of security. But you'll take whatever you can get in a family if you believe that you're going to fly apart.
You could have said, hey, we're planning to have a family. It might involve you. The bottom line is that you're living in a house for free that I gave you. You guys sought me out, asked me for the
Okay,
employment.
so you think that you can dictate our every move?
No, I just wanted a little bit
No.
of courtesy, that's all.
I'm so thankful.
So I think that the daughter, Elizabeth, is speaking very plainly, and I think she could say it a little nicer, maybe. I don't know, maybe she has some history with the dad. But I think she's a straight talker. She can see through what the subtext is, as the dad is speaking in a lot of, I think, circuitous ways. She's like, so let me get this straight. You're saying blank. And I think that that's a strength of hers. I think maybe that's that rebel part of her in the family that she would refer to, that as she was growing up, she was the rebel. She didn't like following other people's rules. And maybe what that means is she doesn't like following the father's rules.
That he gave to us rent-free, but my dad definitely tries to play the guilt trip thing, and to hear him say that we're not grateful of him giving us the home to live in is like a slap in the face.
Okay, so that's interesting that she says the father likes to use guilt trips, and I think that's what she said. And that is a tool of enmeshed families. Enmeshed families will use guilt and shame, but a lot of guilt tripping to get people to take down their boundaries and to allow people to invade them. It's a very frequent tactic. Why do people do this? Well, like I was saying, it's because people are terrified that if they don't guilt trip the other person, and it's a subconscious belief, it's not usually conscious, that unless we are completely in sync all the time, and there's any kind of if there's any kind of difference, then we're going to fly apart and we're not going to have the closeness that we have. And that is that's usually based on past traumas. But anyway, I don't know. Let's continue watching.
Yes.
You're my daughter, I love you, and I'm concerned about you. You seem like you don't believe that. Listen, when a father helps their kids, all they want is a little bit of gratitude back. That's it. My help does not come with strings. Just show me you're grateful.
My help does not come with strings. Just show me that you're grateful. Sounds like a string. Now, it's fine if the dad wants some respect, some gratitude. That's totally fine. There's a different way to communicate that. He could say something like, so, honey, you're an adult, you're married, and I support you, and I like Andrei. But, and when I allowed you to move into the house, I was a little concerned about him working. I was a little concerned about if you were going to keep the house up to up to standards, and because I don't want the house to be identified on the street as one of those houses that doesn't keep up their front yard or whatever, or I'm worried about the condition of that, whatever the dad says. And so when I drove by and I saw that the lawn wasn't mowed, it kind of hurt my feelings. It made me feel like the two of you just didn't care that I gave you the house. And I don't know, it just kind of hurts my feelings, that's all. So that's a different way to communicate it, right? Rather than the way that he does. The way that he does communicate is really common, which is to not even identify your hurt and to mainly talk from other places, either from anger, hostility, or from judgmental guilt-tripping modes, which doesn't seem to be going over with the daughter. I wonder how that would go over with the daughter if he said, it hurt my feelings, rather than you need to show me gratitude. I wonder how the daughter would react. I don't know.
Or,
Listen, that's all I'm looking for.
well, I really hope that you mean that.
I do, sweetie. Elizabeth has a major attitude, and it didn't used to be like that. And I really feel that that's his influence. Love you.
Love you. My dad.
So this is kind of a dangerous triangulation that is occurring in this family. That as the daughter starts to push back, it's perceived by the father and maybe by others that this is Andrei influencing her. instead of her doing things the way that she wants to do it, if she pushes back, it must be because of Andrei. We've seen this in other families as well, that the Elizabeths of the story have been put down and sort of controlled, or at least they've been compliant to a certain paradigm in a family. And when they decide to break free of that a little bit, we saw this with Brandon and Julia a little bit, I think, if I remember right. And instead of the parents saying, oh, well, I guess my child is growing up now, they're an adult, and they want things to be different now. Instead of respecting that from the child, the adult child, they say, oh, this must be the evil influence of the foreigner in their brain, which is, I guess, possible, but at the very least, it's not the entire story. I think that Elizabeth is doing this partly to stick up for Andrei, but I also think she agrees with it to some extent as well. I don't think that Andrei is pulling he's not the puppet master of Elizabeth. It certainly doesn't seem that way. So this is dangerous because as Elizabeth continues to go down this road, I wonder if the father is going to increase, and the family is going to increase their anger at Andrei. And that could be a really volatile situation right there, because for Elizabeth to see her family treating Andrei badly, that will cause her to be more rebellious and push back more, which they will think, oh, it's just more of Andrei getting in the way, and the thing could really spin out of control. I don't know. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself and take care of others, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.